Get on the ground, now! Officer Eric Donovan's voice echoed through Terminal C at Riverside International Airport. His weapon drawn, pointed at the black woman in the business suit, Agent Camille Foster froze, hands raised, briefcase dropped. "Officer, there's been a mistake." "Shut up! On the ground!" Officer Tyler Bennett circled behind her, hand on his taser. "Suspicious device detected in your bag. You're under arrest." Camille's eyes widened. "That's my badge. I'm a federal—" Donovan shoved her forward hard. Her knees hit the polished floor. Zip ties cut into her wrists. 100 phones emerged, recording everything. "Terrorist suspect in custody," Donovan announced into his radio, voice dripping with satisfaction. What he didn't know, the suspicious device triggering their scanner, was Camille's Department of Homeland Security credentials. The badge identifying her as Assistant Director of Internal Investigations, the woman they were, dragging through the airport in handcuffs, had the authority to end both their careers with a single phone call. And every second of their mistake was being live-streamed to thousands. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. 4 hours earlier, Washington, D.C. basked in crisp autumn morning light. Agent Camille Foster reviewed her presentation one final time in her corner office at the Department of Homeland Security headquarters. The briefing materials were perfect. 3 years of investigative work compiled into a comprehensive report on airport security protocol failures. At 38, Camille had built her career on precision and thoroughness. Howard University undergrad, Georgetown Law, 12 years climbing through DHS ranks from field agent to assistant director of internal investigations. Her specialty, identifying systemic failures in federal security operations before they became national incidents. Today's presentation in Los Angeles was critical. Regional directors from 15 airports would hear her findings on discrimination patterns in TSA screening procedures. Her data showed disturbing trends. Minorities were 4.7 times more likely to receive enhanced screening despite lower rates of actual security threats. The research was solid. The recommendations were actionable. This presentation could change policy nationwide. Her assistant knocked. "Agent Foster, your car's here. You need to leave now to make your flight." Camille grabbed her briefcase, the one she'd carried for 6 years. Leather worn smooth from constant travel. Inside, laptop presentation materials, her DHS credentials in their official case, and the badge she'd earned through relentless dedication. The badge was her pride. Solid metal, department seal prominent, her name engraved beneath her title, Assistant Director, Internal Investigations. It represented everything she'd worked for, every barrier she'd broken, every skeptic she'd proven wrong. She caught her reflection in the office window. Navy blue suit, perfectly tailored. Natural hair pulled back professionally. Small pearl earrings her mother had given her when she graduated law school. Everything about her appearance communicated competence and authority. Camille's phone buzzed. A text from Director Malcolm Wright, her direct superior and mentor, knocked them dead in L.A. "This presentation will save lives." "Proud of you," she smiled and typed back, "Thank you, sir. See you next week." The drive to Riverside International Airport took 40 minutes through moderate traffic. Camille reviewed her notes, made minor adjustments to her opening remarks, and confirmed her hotel reservation in Los Angeles. Riverside International was a mid-sized regional hub serving 3 million passengers annually. Modern terminals, efficient security, generally well managed. Camille had flown through dozens of times without incident. She arrived at 9:30 a.m. for her 11:15 flight. Plenty of time. She bypassed the check-in kiosks, mobile boarding pass already loaded, and headed straight to security. The TSA checkpoint hummed with typical morning energy. Business travelers rushed through pre-check lanes. Families with small children navigated the standard screening process. Everything appeared routine and professional. Camille chose the standard security lane, despite her federal credentials. She made it a practice to experience what ordinary citizens experienced. How could she investigate security procedures if she always bypassed them? She placed her briefcase on the conveyor belt, removed her laptop, took off her shoes and belt, walked through the metal detector without incident. On the other side, she waited for her belongings. The conveyor belt moved steadily. Her laptop emerged, her shoes, her belt, but her briefcase stopped inside the X-ray machine. The TSA agent manning the scanner leaned closer to his screen. His expression changed. He pressed a button. The belt reversed, pulling her briefcase back through for a second scan. Camille felt mild annoyance, but no concern. Secondary screening happened occasionally. Random checks. Equipment sensitivity. Nothing unusual. The agent pressed another button. A yellow light activated above the checkpoint. Within seconds, 2 airport police officers approached. Officer Eric Donovan and Officer Tyler Bennett, both in tactical gear that seemed excessive for airport duty. "Ma'am, is this your bag?" The TSA agent asked, pointing to her briefcase. "Yes, it is. We need to conduct a secondary inspection." "Please step aside." Camille complied, moving to the designated area. Other passengers glanced over with curiosity before continuing to their gates. She checked her watch. Still plenty of time. Donovan pulled on latex gloves with deliberate slowness. Bennett positioned himself uncomfortably close to her, invading personal space in a way that felt intentional rather than accidental. "What's in the bag, ma'am?" Donovan asked, his tone already accusatory. "Work materials, laptop, documents, and my federal credentials." Something flickered in Donovan's eyes. Not relief at learning she was law enforcement. Something else. Resentment, maybe, or challenge. "We'll need to verify that," he said, unzipping her briefcase with unnecessary force. Camille's instincts, honed through years of investigation, began sending warnings. This wasn't standard procedure. This was something else. She had no idea her morning was about to become a national incident that would expose everything she'd spent 3 years documenting. Officer Donovan rifled through Camille's briefcase with deliberate aggression. He pulled out files, scattered papers, handled her laptop roughly. His body language communicated contempt rather than professional security screening. "Lots of official-looking documents here," Donovan said loudly enough for nearby passengers to hear. "Real convenient," Camille's jaw tightened. "Those are classified briefing materials for a presentation at LAX. My credentials are in the leather case, on the right side." Donovan ignored her, continuing his theatrical search. Bennett circled around, positioning himself to block her from view of the main checkpoint. Creating a bubble of isolation where witnesses couldn't see clearly, the TSA agent who'd flagged her bag stood nervously nearby. "Officers!" The scanner showed a metallic object with unusual density. "That's why I called you." "Yeah, we see it," Donovan muttered, finally pulling out the leather credential case. He opened it, studied the badge and ID card inside. His expression didn't change to recognition or apology. It hardened. "This could be fake," he announced. Camille's professional composure cracked slightly. "Excuse me?" "Fake badges are sold online all the time. Counterfeits. We need to verify authenticity." "Officer, that badge has a holographic seal, an embedded chip, and my credentials can be verified through the federal database in 30 seconds. Or," Bennett interjected, "you could be impersonating a federal officer. That's a serious crime." The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Nearby passengers began to notice the confrontation. Phones emerged. A middle-aged woman named Emma Rodriguez, traveling for her daughter's wedding, started recording discreetly. Camille forced calm into her voice. "I understand security concerns. Call the DHS verification hotline. The number is on the back of my ID card. They'll confirm my identity immediately." Donovan pocketed her credentials without making any calls. "We'll verify it at the security office. You need to come with us." "Am I being detained?" "You're being escorted for secondary screening." "On what grounds?" "Suspicious materials and potential credential fraud." Camille's investigator instincts kicked in fully now. This wasn't about security. This was about power. She'd seen it 1,000 times in her investigations. Officers who couldn't handle someone they perceived as subordinate holding authority over them. A black woman claiming to be a federal director. Their worldview couldn't process it. Easier to assume fraud than accept reality. Officer Donovan, I'm asking you to verify my credentials before this escalates unnecessarily. I'll determine what's necessary, Donovan snapped. Now are you going to cooperate, or do we need to make this difficult? The threat was barely veiled. Cooperate meant submit to humiliation. Refuse meant physical confrontation. Emma Rodriguez's phone captured every word. Her finger hovered over Facebook Live. She pressed it. Within seconds, 47 people were watching. Then 200, then 800. Camille calculated her options. She could invoke federal authority more forcefully, but that might provoke exactly the confrontation they seemed to want. She could comply and sort it out at the security office, accepting temporary humiliation to avoid escalation. But years of investigating discrimination had taught her something crucial. Submission to unlawful authority didn't de-escalate. It enabled. I'll accompany you to verify my credentials, Camille said clearly, but I'm stating for the record that this detention is unlawful and discriminatory. Donovan's face flushed red. Discriminatory? I'm doing my job. Your job requires verifying credentials, not assuming they're fake because they don't match your expectations of who holds federal authority. The words hit their target. Donovan stepped closer, invading her space aggressively. You think you're better than us? Think your fancy badge makes you special? I think my badge makes me a federal officer who should be treated professionally, not as a suspect without cause. Bennett grabbed her arm, hard. Let's go, now! Camille jerked away. Do not touch me without legal justification. You're refusing to comply. Bennett shouted, loud enough to draw maximum attention. Suspect is resisting. Emma's live stream viewer count hit 3,000. Comments flooded in. Call a supervisor. This is racial profiling. Record everything. Airport travelers stopped, creating a human audience. Some filmed. Most just stared, grateful it wasn't them, while knowing exactly what they were witnessing. The checkpoint supervisor, a Latino man named Carlos Rivera, approached cautiously. Officers, what's the situation? Suspected credential fraud, Donovan said. Subject refusing to cooperate with security screening. I've cooperated with every lawful request, Camille corrected. I'm refusing to be manhandled without cause. Rivera glanced at the growing crowd, the phones recording, the tension escalating. Maybe we should call a supervisor from DHS. If she's really... We don't need federal permission to do our jobs. Donovan interrupted. The power struggle had become explicit. This wasn't about security anymore. This was about ego, about turf, about two officers who couldn't accept that the woman they'd profiled might actually outrank them by several levels. Camille's phone rang in her purse. Director Wright's ringtone. He'd be wondering why she hadn't checked in. She reached for it. Hands where I can see them. Bennett yelled, hand moving to his taser. That's my phone. My superior is calling. I don't care if the president is calling. Hands up! The situation was spiraling. Camille raised her hands slowly, watching both officers carefully. She'd investigated enough excessive force incidents to recognize the signs. They were building justification for whatever came next. Emma Rodriguez's livestream hit 10,000 viewers. Local news stations were already monitoring social media alerts. One wrong move, one misinterpreted gesture, and this would escalate from humiliation to violence. Camille prepared for the worst while praying for de-escalation that wasn't coming. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I need to answer that call, Camille said evenly, her phone still ringing in her purse on the checkpoint table. It's my federal supervisor. If I don't answer, protocol requires shut up. Donovan moved forward aggressively. You don't give us orders. The phone stopped ringing, went to voicemail. Within seconds it rang again. Director Wright didn't accept missed calls from senior staff during travel. Bennett grabbed Camille's purse, dumping its contents onto the checkpoint table. Phone, wallet, keys, lipstick, tissues scattered across the metal surface. The phone continued ringing, Director Wright's name visible on the screen. DHS Director Wright, Carlos Rivera read aloud. Officers, maybe we should... That could be anyone, Donovan interrupted. Fake contact name. We see it all the time. Camille's composure finally cracked. You're suggesting I faked my supervisor's contact information? This is beyond absurd. Your attitude isn't helping your situation, Bennett warned. My situation. I'm a federal officer being harassed during routine travel. The crowd grew larger. Terminal C's main corridor slowed as travelers stopped to watch. Emma's livestream viewer count hit 25,000. Other passengers filmed from multiple angles. The incident was being documented with thorough redundancy. Airport Director Helen Vasquez, monitoring security cameras from her office, saw the growing crowd on her monitors. She radioed checkpoint supervision. What's happening at Station 4? Officers Donovan and Bennett are conducting secondary screening, Rivera responded carefully. It looks like a confrontation. Get it resolved quietly and quickly, but quiet resolution wasn't what Donovan wanted. He'd committed to his narrative. Backing down meant admitting error. Escalation meant maintaining authority. Ma'am, you're coming with us to the security office for formal questioning, Donovan announced officially. I'm catching a flight in 90 minutes. Not anymore, you're not. The declaration crystallized everything. This wasn't security screening. This was punishment for challenging their authority. Camille made a decision. She'd spent 3 years documenting exactly this kind of abuse. Now she was experiencing it firsthand. She would not submit quietly and let them bury it in paperwork later. Officer Donovan, I'm formally identifying myself as Assistant Director Camille Foster, Department of Homeland Security, Internal Investigations Division. My credentials are authentic and easily verifiable. This detention is unlawful. I'm requesting immediate supervisor intervention and documentation of this incident. The formal declaration, delivered with unmistakable authority, should have changed everything. Instead, it enraged Donovan. You're not a director of anything. You're a liar with fake credentials, and you're under arrest. For what crime? Impersonating a federal officer, interfering with airport security, and if you resist, assaulting an officer. Camille's blood ran cold. He was manufacturing charges, building a paper trail to justify whatever happened next. She'd seen it in dozens of investigations. The pattern was unmistakable. Bennett pulled out zip ties. Turn around, hands behind your back. You're arresting me? Based on what evidence? Based on suspicious materials, fake credentials, and your aggressive behavior. Emma Rodriguez's live stream exploded. 50,000 viewers. Comments screaming injustice. Someone had identified Camille through facial recognition and posted her actual DHS profile photo. Confirmation spreading that she was exactly who she claimed to be, but Donovan and Bennett weren't monitoring social media. They were committed to their performance. I will not turn around, Camille stated clearly. I will not submit to unlawful arrest. I'm invoking my federal authority and demanding immediate supervisor intervention. Last chance, Donovan barked. Comply or we use force. The threat hung in the terminal air. 100 witnesses held their breath. Camille stood her ground, hands visible but not raised in submission, posture straight, meeting Donovan's eyes with zero fear. Do what you think you need to do, officer. But understand that everything you're doing is being recorded, documented, and will be reviewed by federal investigators. Choose your next actions carefully. The warning should have penetrated. It didn't. Donovan grabbed her arm. Camille pulled away. Bennett moved in from behind. 2 officers coordinated, overwhelming a woman half their combined weight. They slammed her forward onto the checkpoint table. Her face hit metal. Her arm twisted painfully behind her back. Zip ties cut into her wrists. Stop! You're hurting her! Someone in the crowd yelled. Federal agent being assaulted. Another voice shouted. Carlos Rivera backed away, reaching for his radio. This had gone too far. He needed help before someone got seriously hurt. Donovan yanked Camille upright, her hands bound behind her. Blood trickled from her lip where it had hit the table. Her suit jacket was torn, but her eyes remained defiant. Agent Camille Foster, you're under arrest for impersonating a federal officer and resisting security screening, Donovan announced for the cameras. They marched her through Terminal C like a criminal. Past shocked travelers, past children who stared, past elderly passengers who whispered prayers. Emma Rodriguez followed, live stream still active. 75,000 viewers. Local news vans were already being dispatched. The footage was spreading faster than airport security could contain. In the security office, they pushed Camille into a metal chair. Bennett finally made the call they should have made an hour ago. Yeah, we got a woman claiming to be DHS. Need to verify credentials. Name is Camille Foster. He read her badge number while Donovan stood guard. The voice on the other end of the phone spoke. Bennett's face went pale, then grey, then ashen. What? He whispered. Say that again, Donovan noticed.
What is it?
Bennett held the phone away from his ear, staring at Camille as if seeing her for the first time. She's real, he whispered. She's actually the Assistant Director of Internal Investigations. And her boss, the Director of Homeland Security, is demanding to speak with whoever arrested her. Right now, the power shift was instantaneous and absolute. Officer Bennett's hand trembled as he held the phone. The voice on the other end wasn't asking questions. It was issuing commands with barely controlled fury. Put Agent Foster on the phone. Immediately, Bennett looked at Camille, still zip-tied in the metal chair, blood on her lip, torn jacket, but eyes burning with vindication. Sir, she's in custody. You need to release her right now and pray she doesn't have you both prosecuted for civil rights violations. Who is your supervisor? Airport Security Chief Brian Kelso. Get him in that room within 60 seconds, or I'm sending federal agents to arrest everyone involved. Do you understand me? Yes, sir. Bennett's voice cracked. He looked at Donovan. Cut her loose. What? Cut the zip ties, now! Donovan's brain struggled to process. But she's exactly who she said she was. She's a federal director. We just arrested the head of DHS Internal Investigations. The words landed like bombs. Donovan's face transformed from anger to horror to panic in 3 seconds. His career, his pension, his freedom, all of it flashing before his eyes. Bennett cut Camille's restraints with shaking hands. Ma'am, I'm so sorry. There's been a terrible mistake. There's been no mistake, Camille said coldly, rubbing her wrists. You deliberately ignored multiple opportunities to verify my credentials because you couldn't accept that a black woman might hold federal authority. She took the phone from Bennett. Director Wright, Camille, are you hurt? Malcolm Wright's voice carried command and concern simultaneously. Minor injuries, bruised ribs from being slammed onto a table, cut lip. Nothing serious. I'm looking at live stream footage of you being arrested. It has 140,000 viewers and climbing. CNN just called my office. What the hell happened? Camille summarized in precise investigator language. The suspicious device alert. Donovan's refusal to verify credentials. The escalating aggression. The manufactured charges. The violent arrest. So everything you've been documenting for 3 years just happened to you personally, Wright said. Yes, sir. Textbook case. Where are the officers now? Camille looked at Donovan and Bennett, both standing frozen like statues, awaiting execution. Standing right here, listening to this conversation. Put me on speaker. She activated the speaker function. Director Wright's voice filled the small security office with authority that made both officers flinch. Officers Donovan and Bennett, I'm Malcolm Wright, Director of the Department of Homeland Security. You just committed multiple federal crimes against one of my senior officials. Those crimes were documented by dozens of witnesses and broadcast to hundreds of thousands of people. I'm personally requesting FBI investigation, DOJ civil rights review, and federal prosecution. Your careers are over, but whether you spend the next decade in federal prison depends on what you do in the next 60 seconds. Silence. Both officers looked like they might vomit. What do you want us to do? Donovan whispered. First, get Agent Foster immediate medical attention. Second, preserve all evidence. Your body cameras, security footage, witness statements. Third, contact your union representation because you're going to need lawyers. Good ones. Finally, Prepare written statements admitting exactly what happened without trying to minimize or justify your actions. Am I clear? Yes, sir, they both mumbled. Agent Foster, I'm sending Victor Lane from our FBI liaison office. He'll be there in 40 minutes with a full investigative team. I want you to go to the hospital, get examined, and document every injury. This is now a federal case. Understood, sir? And Camille, I'm sorry this happened to you. Don't be sorry, sir. Be ready. Because we're about to prove everything I documented is real. The line disconnected. Camille stood slowly, every muscle aching. She faced both officers who'd been so confident an hour ago. My credentials are in your pocket. Officer Donovan. He pulled them out with shaking hands, offering them like a guilty child returning something stolen. Camille took them, studying the badge that had caused all this. You know what's interesting? The device that triggered your scanner. This badge has an embedded RFID chip for building access. Every federal facility uses them. Your scanner identified it as unusual metallic density, which any trained security officer would recognize immediately. She pinned the badge to her torn jacket. But you didn't check. You didn't verify. You assumed fraud because reality didn't match your prejudices. Security Chief Kelso burst through the door, face red and panicked. What the hell happened? I just got a call from DHS Director. He stopped, seeing Camille's condition and the two officers' faces. Chief Kelso, Camille said calmly. I'm Assistant Director Camille Foster, DHS Internal Investigations. Your officers just provided a perfect case study for my presentation on discrimination in airport security procedures. I was supposed to deliver it in Los Angeles. Instead, I'll be delivering it to federal investigators about this airport. Kelso went pale. Ma'am, I'm sure this was a misunderstanding. There was no misunderstanding. There was racial profiling, abuse of authority, excessive force, false arrest, and evidence fabrication. All documented. All federal crimes. Outside the security office, Emma Rodriguez's live stream had reached 200,000 viewers. The footage had been shared by news organizations, civil rights groups, and congressional representatives. Justice for Camille was trending nationally. CNN breaking news. DHS official violently arrested at airport while traveling for work, MSNBC. Federal director dragged through airport after officers refused to verify her credentials. Even conservative outlets couldn't spin this. The video was too clear, the facts too obvious, the power differential too stark. Airport Director Helen Vasquez arrived at the security office in full crisis mode. She'd seen the live stream. She'd fielded calls from corporate headquarters. She knew exactly how bad this was. Agent Foster, on behalf of Riverside International Airport, I apologize. Save it, Camille interrupted. Your apologies don't undo assault. They don't erase humiliation. They don't compensate for trauma. I'll accept your full cooperation with federal investigators. Anything else is meaningless. Medical personnel arrived with a wheelchair. Camille waved it off. I'm walking out of here the same way I was dragged in. On my own feet. With dignity, you tried to strip away. She walked through Terminal C with medical staff flanking her. Passengers recognized her from the live stream. Applause started small, then built. Travelers stood clapping as she passed. Some cried. Others saluted. The walk of vindication through the same corridor where she'd been paraded as a criminal. Donovan and Bennett watched from the security office, understanding with perfect clarity that their lives had just been destroyed by their own prejudices, and this was only the beginning. Within 3 hours, Riverside International Airport was under siege, not by terrorists but by media, federal investigators, and public outrage that threatened to consume everyone involved. Agent Victor Lane arrived with an FBI team of 8. They sealed the security office, confiscated all recording equipment, and began interviewing every witness. The investigation wasn't preliminary. It was comprehensive and immediate. Emma Rodriguez's live stream footage had been downloaded and archived by media organizations, civil rights groups, and legal advocacy networks before airport security could even think about suppressing it. The video existed in thousands of locations, immune to control or deletion. CNN played it on loop. Camille's professional appearance, her calm identification, Donovan's aggressive rejection, the violent takedown, the perp walk through the terminal, every moment documented in high definition. Legal analyst commentary was unanimous. This is textbook civil rights violation. Federal prosecution is virtually guaranteed. The Department of Homeland Security issued an official statement within the hour. We are aware of the incident involving Assistant Director Camille Foster at Riverside International Airport. A full federal investigation is underway. We will not tolerate discrimination or abuse toward any of our personnel or any citizen. Those responsible will face appropriate legal consequences. The statement was measured but clear. DHS was circling its wagons around Camille, not the airport. Director Wright held a press conference at 3 p.m., unusual for an incident that hadn't yet been fully investigated. His message was pointed. Agent Foster is one of our most dedicated and accomplished officials. She was traveling to deliver a presentation on eliminating discrimination in airport security. The irony that she became a victim of exactly what she was trying to fix is not lost on anyone. Social media exploded beyond the live stream. Justice for Camille dominated Twitter. Instagram filled with photos of black professionals sharing their own experiences of having credentials questioned, authority doubted, competence challenged. I'm a surgeon. Security once asked if I was really a doctor or just wore scrubs to look important. I'm a federal prosecutor. A courtroom deputy asked if I was the defendant when I arrived to try a case. I'm a university president. Campus security stopped me and asked for my student ID. The pattern was undeniable. Professional black women facing constant verification of their right to occupy spaces their credentials had earned them access to. Congressional response was swift. Senator Claire Mitchell, chair of the Homeland Security Committee, announced immediate hearings. If this can happen to a federal director, what's happening to ordinary citizens without power or protection? The investigation expanded beyond the immediate incident. FBI agents pulled security records for Riverside International going back 2 years. Patterns emerged within hours. Minority passengers were flagged for secondary screening at 3.2 times the rate of white passengers, despite no corresponding increase in actual security threats detected. Random additional screening wasn't random at all. It was systematically targeting travelers based on appearance. Use of force incidents. Officer Donovan had been involved in 7 confrontations in 18 months. 6 involved minorities. 0 resulted in disciplinary action. Complaint records showed a troubling pattern. 14 formal complaints filed against airport security personnel in 2 years. Response: 11 dismissed without investigation. 3 resulted in additional training with no consequences. Federal funding audit revealed Riverside International had received $1.8 million in TSA grants for security improvements. Applications claimed exemplary civil rights compliance and diversity training. The reality didn't match the paperwork. This is fraud, Agent Lane stated during his briefing to Director Wright. They lied on federal applications to get federal money. That's wire fraud, mail fraud, and grant fraud. We can prosecute this multiple ways. The financial investigation deepened. Civil asset forfeiture records showed troubling patterns. Airport police had seized $340,000 in cash over 2 years from travelers accused of suspicious large currency amounts. 82% of those seizures involved minorities. Most were never charged with crimes, but their money was never returned. The system was generating revenue through legalized theft, targeting travelers least likely to have resources to fight back legally. Media investigation teams descended on Riverside. Local journalists who'd ignored complaints for years suddenly found overlooked evidence. Interview requests flooded travelers who'd been harassed but stayed silent. Attorney David Chen, prominent civil rights lawyer, contacted Camille through DHS. I'd like to represent you pro bono, but more importantly, I want to represent every person who was victimized by this airport's practices. and didn't have your platform to fight back. Within 48 hours, Jen had identified 37 potential plaintiffs. Stories of harassment, illegal searches, false arrests, stolen property. Victims who'd accepted injustice because challenging airports seemed impossible. Airport industry response was panicked. Riverside International wasn't an anomaly. Similar practices existed in dozens of regional airports. If Camille's case opened the floodgates to scrutiny, the entire industry faced accountability crisis. Airport Directors Association issued a defensive statement. One incident doesn't reflect the professionalism of thousands of dedicated security personnel nationwide, but the evidence suggested otherwise. Civil rights organizations had been documenting these patterns for years. They'd filed reports, held press conferences, testified before Congress. Nobody had listened. Now, with video of a federal director being assaulted going viral, everyone was paying attention. Corporate sponsors began distancing themselves from Riverside International. Airlines rerouted flights where possible. Convention planners canceled events. Tourism projections for the region dropped 23% in 48 hours. The economic pressure was immediate, and severe. Mayor's office issued an emergency statement promising comprehensive review and accountability for all involved. Translation: trying to contain damage before it destroyed the city's economy. But containment wasn't possible. The video had been seen by 12 million people. News coverage reached 50 million. This wasn't a local story anymore. It was a national symbol of systemic discrimination. Officer Donovan and Bennett were suspended without pay pending investigation. Their union representation issued a tepid statement about due process that satisfied nobody. Security Chief Kelso was placed on administrative leave. Airport Director Vasquez faced calls for resignation from city council members, trying to distance themselves from the scandal. The investigation revealed communication records showing prior knowledge. Kelso had received complaints about Donovan's aggressive behavior with minority passengers. He'd ignored them. Vasquez had signed off on security protocols that were obviously discriminatory. She defended them as thorough screening. The institutional failure went to the top. This wasn't about two rogue officers. This was about leadership that enabled, encouraged, and defended discrimination. As evidence mounted, Camille recovered in her hotel room, body aching but mind clear. She'd spent 3 years documenting abstract patterns. Now she'd experienced them personally. The data had a face. Her face, Director Wright called that evening. "How are you holding up?" "I'm fine, sir." "Angry but fine. Good. Channel that anger. Your presentation about airport discrimination. I want you to deliver it. Not in Los Angeles. At congressional hearings. Use your case as the centerpiece. Show them it's not theoretical anymore." Camille smiled despite her split lip. "Yes, sir, gladly." The ripple effect continued spreading. But opposition was mobilizing too, preparing a counterattack designed to destroy her credibility before she could destroy their system. The backlash began before Camille even left the hospital. Anonymous social media accounts with professional graphics flooded platforms with coordinated messaging designed to shift the narrative. DHS official had history of complaints against local law enforcement, completely fabricated, but shared thousands of times within hours. Investigation reveals Camille Foster's credential violations in previous assignments. No such investigation existed, but the headline planted doubt. Airport security sources: Foster was combative and aggressive before arrest, contradicted by video evidence, but effective at creating false equivalents. The disinformation campaign was sophisticated. Professional PR firms, hired by aviation industry groups and police unions, coordinated messaging across multiple platforms. Their goal wasn't to prove Donovan and Bennett were right. Their goal was to make the truth seem uncertain. Conservative news outlets amplified the narrative. Was this really discrimination, or did a federal official abuse her authority? Both sides of the controversial airport incident. There weren't both sides when video showed everything clearly. But false balance was a weapon, deployed strategically to confuse rather than clarify. Anonymous threats escalated quickly. Camille's personal phone number leaked online. Calls and texts flooded in. Death threats, racial slurs, rape threats so graphic they required FBI investigation. You should have complied, bitch. Now you'll pay. Uppity black bitch thought she was special. Streets aren't safe forever. Your badge won't protect you when we find you. The psychological warfare was designed to break her. Make her afraid. Make her reconsider pursuing prosecution. Make her go away quietly. Attorney David Chen faced his own harassment. His law office received bomb threats. His car was vandalized. Someone hacked his email and leaked client communications that violated attorney-client privilege. The breach was criminal, but effective at undermining his cases. Emma Rodriguez, whose live stream had documented everything, became a target. Anonymous accounts doxed her, home address, workplace, children's school locations, all posted publicly with implicit threats. Emma Rodriguez thinks she's a hero. Let's show her what happens to rats who live stream police. Her employer received coordinated complaints about her creating hostile work environment and making political statements. During work hours, complete fabrications designed to get her fired and silence her testimony. The witness intimidation was systematic. Every person who'd filmed the incident or provided statements to FBI received harassment. Some subtle, mysterious IRS audits, professional license reviews, insurance policy cancellations. Others blatant, threatening messages, vandalized property, stalking. The message was clear. Help Camille Foster face consequences. Financial warfare intensified. Nuisance lawsuits targeted Camille personally. Officer Donovan filed a $5 million defamation claim, alleging she'd falsely portrayed him as racist and damaged his reputation. The claim was absurd. Video evidence supported every accusation, but required legal response that cost time and money. Security Chief Kelso sued for wrongful termination, claiming he'd been scapegoated to protect higher officials. His lawsuit demanded access to Camille's personnel files, investigation records, and communications, a fishing expedition designed to find ammunition for attack. Airport Director Vasquez retained a crisis management firm that specialized in reputation destruction. Their strategy: make Camille the problem, not the symptom. Portray her as a divisive figure with an agenda against law enforcement. They leaked selective details from her career. A complaint filed 7 years ago by an officer she'd investigated. Complaint was unsubstantiated, but the headline suggested pattern. A negative performance review from 10 years ago, later proven to be retaliatory, but context was omitted in leaks. Death by 1,000 cuts. Distract from the core issue by making everything about Camille's character rather than Donovan's actions. Political pressure mounted from unexpected directions. Aviation industry lobbyists contacted congressional representatives, warning that aggressive federal prosecution of airport security personnel would cripple security operations nationwide and make airports vulnerable to actual threats. The framing was deliberate. Holding officers accountable for civil rights violations somehow endangered national security, as if professionalism and constitutional compliance were mutually exclusive. Senator Richard Barnes, who'd received $340,000 in campaign contributions from police unions and airport industry groups, issued a statement questioning whether federal overreach was creating a hostile environment for security personnel just doing their jobs. The union representing Donovan and Bennett launched a national campaign. Billboards appeared in 3 cities. Who will protect you when police are prosecuted for split-second decisions? Below, a photo of Donovan in dress uniform, looking heroic rather than criminal. The billboard didn't mention the 15 minutes of deliberate escalation documented on video. It didn't acknowledge the refusal to verify credentials. It portrayed the incident as instantaneous judgment call rather than calculated abuse. Bakar officers' rallies organized across the region. Hundreds of law enforcement personnel from surrounding jurisdictions attended, portraying themselves as victims of anti-police sentiment rather than colleagues of officers who'd committed federal crimes. If they can destroy Eric Donovan's career for doing his job, they can destroy any of us, the union president declared to cheering crowds. The victim reversal was complete in their narrative. Donovan wasn't the aggressor. He was the persecuted. Camille wasn't the victim. She was the threat. Anonymous packages arrived at Camille's hotel. One contained photos of her mother's house, with crosshairs drawn on windows. Another included printouts of her daily schedule, where she ate breakfast, when she left her hotel, what car she drove. Proof that she was being surveilled by professionals. Federal protection was assigned. 2 agents shadowed her constantly. Her freedom of movement evaporated. Going to the pharmacy required security assessment. Coffee runs needed advanced planning. Privacy became a luxury she couldn't afford. The psychological toll mounted. Camille woke from nightmares of the checkpoint table hitting her face. She checked locks obsessively. Crowds made her anxious. Airports triggered panic responses. The trauma was real, even for someone trained to handle high-stress situations. Her therapist's assessment was clinical. You're experiencing symptoms consistent with PTSD. The assault, combined with ongoing threats and harassment, has created sustained traumatic stress. This is a normal response to abnormal circumstances, but admitting vulnerability gave opponents ammunition. They'd claim she was emotionally unstable and unable to perform her duties. Her trauma would become evidence against her credibility. Legal attacks multiplied. Donovan's attorney filed motions to suppress the live-stream video, claiming Emma Rodriguez had violated wiretapping laws by recording without consent. The argument was legally absurd. Public spaces have no expectation of privacy, but created delays and legal costs. Airport Corporate Counsel filed complaints with DHS Inspector General, alleging Camille had misused federal credentials and abused her position to interfere with legitimate security operations. The complaints were meritless, but required formal response and investigation. The strategy was transparent: bury her in so much procedural warfare that she couldn't fight effectively. Make the cost of justice too high to pursue. Anonymous sources leaked to friendly media outlets. Federal officials questioned Foster's judgment in escalating routine security check. The sources didn't exist, but the headlines created perception of institutional doubt. Financial pressure extended to her supporters. Attorney Chen's law firm saw 3 major clients cancel retainers after receiving concerns about his judgment. The clients wouldn't specify who raised concerns, but the economic message was clear. Dr. Susan Park, who'd agreed to testify as an expert witness on discriminatory security practices, received notice that her university consulting contract wouldn't be renewed. The university claimed budget constraints. The timing suggested otherwise. One by one, allies faced consequences designed to isolate Camille, make her fight alone, make others think twice before standing with her. The coordination was sophisticated. This wasn't random pushback. This was organized resistance from systems that had profited from discrimination for decades and weren't surrendering without a fight. Late one night, exhausted and surrounded by legal documents, Camille called Director Wright. "Sir, they're trying to bury me. Every witness is being targeted. Every supporter is being punished. This isn't just about my case anymore. It's about sending a message that fighting back costs too much." "I know," Wright said quietly. "That's why you can't back down. They're throwing everything at you because they're terrified. If you win, their entire system collapses. They're fighting for survival. It feels like I'm fighting alone. You're not. Help is coming. From directions they won't expect." The next morning, unexpected reinforcements emerged that would turn the tide completely. But the counterattack had revealed something important. The system Camille was challenging was bigger, more entrenched and more ruthless than anyone had anticipated. The fight for justice was just beginning, and it would get worse before it got better. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Officer Carlos Rivera, the checkpoint supervisor who'd witnessed everything, couldn't sleep. For 3 nights, he'd replayed the incident, watching his own silence enable assault. On the 4th morning, he made a decision that would change everything. He contacted Attorney Chen through an encrypted channel. "I have evidence. Body camera footage, internal communications, and documentation of systematic practices. But I need protection." Chen arranged a meeting at a secure federal facility. Rivera arrived with a flash drive and 3 years of carefully documented discrimination he'd witnessed, but been powerless to stop alone. "Donovan and Bennett aren't anomalies," Rivera explained, spreading files across the conference table. "They're products of a system that rewards aggressive revenue generation over constitutional policing." The flash drive contained internal emails discussing quota systems for secondary screenings, supervisors praising officers who flagged the most, passengers from target demographics, training, materials teaching officers how to escalate encounters to justify searches and confiscations. "They have a playbook," Rivera said. "It's not written policy, but it's institutional knowledge passed down through unofficial channels. How to profile without obvious racism. How to provoke reactions that justify force. How to document incidents to protect yourself legally." Agent Lane reviewed the communications with growing anger. Supervisors celebrating officers who generated the most revenue events. Awards for personnel who seized the most cash. Performance metrics that explicitly incentivized targeting travelers. "This is RICO territory," Lane said quietly. "This is organized criminal enterprise operating under government authority." But Rivera had more. Personal recordings of roll call briefings, where supervisors explicitly told officers to focus on certain types of travelers. Video of training sessions teaching officers how to control narratives when incidents went wrong. And the devastation. Donovan's complete personnel file. "He's been investigated 6 times for excessive force and discrimination," Rivera revealed. "Every investigation cleared him. But I kept the original witness statements versus the official conclusions. They don't match," Lane compared documents. Witnesses described racist language, unjustified aggression, evidence planting. Official reports described necessary security measures against non-compliant subjects. Someone had systematically rewritten reality to protect Donovan. "Who authorized these clearances?" Lane asked. "Security Chief Kelso, directly. His signature is on everyone." And Airport Director Vasquez knew. She approved Kelso's decisions and praised him publicly for maintaining security standards. The conspiracy went to the top. Not just bad officers. Bad leadership deliberately protecting and encouraging bad officers because it was profitable. Meanwhile, across the country in Seattle, Dr. Rachel Kim was analyzing digital evidence. She'd spent 30 years in forensic analysis, and something about the airport's camera system explanations troubled her. She contacted Agent Lane. "I'll review their systems pro bono. If they tampered with evidence, I'll find it." Dr. Kim's analysis was devastating. Security cameras in the checkpoint area hadn't malfunctioned. 6 cameras had captured different angles of Camille's arrest. All 6 showed technical failures during the critical 15-minute window. The probability of 6 independent systems failing simultaneously is astronomically low, Dr. Kim stated in her report. "This is deliberate evidence destruction using administrator override codes." Someone with command-level access shut down recording before the incident began. The body camera malfunctions were equally fabricated. Both Donovan and Bennett had activated a feature called privacy mode, designed for bathroom breaks or sensitive conversations. They deliberately disabled recording during a public enforcement action. They've been doing this for months, Dr. Kim discovered. I found 73 incidents where cameras were disabled during use of force encounters. This isn't about Camille Foster. This is standard operating procedure to hide misconduct. Social media reinforcements arrived in powerful waves. The Black Professional Network, representing 40,000 members, organized a coordinated response. Lawyers, doctors, professors, executives, all sharing experiences of having credentials questioned and authority doubted. I'm a federal judge. Court security once asked if I was lost when I arrived at my own courthouse. I'm a chief of surgery. A patient's family demanded a real doctor because they assumed I was nursing staff. I'm a Fortune 500 CEO. Hotel staff asked if I was sure I could afford the executive suite I'd booked. The pattern was undeniable. Professional black women facing constant challenges to their right to occupy spaces their qualifications had earned. Veterans organizations mobilized. The National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives issued a blistering statement. The treatment of Agent Foster demonstrates exactly why we created this organization. Officers who view certain citizens as inherently suspicious are a threat to constitutional policing. Corporate allies emerged strategically. Technology companies developing accountability software offered services free. Body camera manufacturers publicly stated their equipment had been misused and revoked service contracts with Riverside International. Our technology increases transparency, one CEO announced. Riverside Airport weaponized it to hide misconduct. We're terminating our relationship and cooperating fully with federal investigators. Financial support shifted dramatically. Camille's legal defense fund, which had struggled to reach $75,000, suddenly exploded to $1.2 million as donors nationwide contributed. Small donations from ordinary citizens, large donations from civil rights organizations. Corporate matching from companies wanting to be on the right side of history. Academic experts provided crucial reinforcement. Criminology professors analyzed the case for major publications. Their conclusions were unanimous. Riverside International exhibited textbook characteristics of institutional corruption. This airport doesn't have a few bad apples. Dr. Michael Torres from Stanford wrote in the Washington Post, "It has systematic rot requiring complete restructuring, not superficial reform." Medical evidence provided another breakthrough. The emergency room physician who treated Camille's injuries came forward with observations. Her injuries were consistent with excessive force, not reasonable security measures. The bruising patterns showed she was slammed face first onto a surface, then her arms were twisted behind her back with significant force. These weren't restraint injuries. These were punishment injuries. The testimony destroyed any remaining claim that officers had used appropriate force. Most unexpected was Officer Tyler Bennett's collapse under pressure. His attorney recognized the obvious. Donovan was the architect. Bennett was the accomplice who'd followed orders. Cooperation might mean survival versus decades in federal prison. Through his lawyer, Bennett indicated willingness to testify against Donovan, Kelso, and Vasquez in exchange for reduced charges. He would detail the quota systems, the training that encouraged profiling, the deliberate camera shutdowns, and Donovan's specific statements before approaching Camille. Donovan said we needed to teach someone a lesson about respecting our authority, Bennett's proffer statement revealed. He'd seen her badge in the X-ray and was angry that she'd tried to pull rank before we even approached her. The entire confrontation was deliberately escalated to humiliate her. The confession shattered the self-defense narrative completely. This wasn't security screening gone wrong. This was calculated punishment for a black woman daring to claim authority. The alliance grew exponentially. Former Riverside passengers came forward with documentation. 29 different individuals had experienced similar harassment. Each incident followed identical patterns: aggressive stops, credential challenges, illegal searches, financial shakedowns. "We thought we were alone," one woman testified. We thought nobody would believe us. Seeing Agent Foster fight back gave us courage to come forward. Anonymous donations funded a legal clinic specifically for airport discrimination victims. Attorneys volunteered hundreds of hours reviewing cases and filing complaints. The floodgates opened. By the end of week 3, Riverside International faced 63 federal civil rights complaints, 22 civil lawsuits, and a Department of Justice pattern or practice investigation that could result in federal receivership of the entire security operation. The reinforcements weren't just defending Camille. They were dismantling the entire system that had enabled her assault. Director Wright coordinated with the Attorney General's office to provide resources beyond individual case support. The full weight of federal law enforcement focused on Riverside International like a laser. "You targeted one of our directors," Wright said in a statement. "You've now engaged the entire Department of Homeland Security, Department of Justice, and FBI. We will pursue accountability with every resource at our disposal." The message resonated beyond Riverside. Airports nationwide began emergency policy reviews, terrified of becoming the next viral scandal. As evidence mounted and allies multiplied, the congressional hearing was scheduled. Public testimony, open forum, complete transparency. Camille would present her case to the nation, backed by overwhelming evidence and an army of supporters. Riverside would face a reckoning, and this time the whole country would be watching. The Rayburn House Office Building hearing room held 400 people. By 9 a.m., 650 had packed inside, with another 800 watching from overflow rooms. C-SPAN carried it live. Major networks interrupted regular programming. This wasn't just a hearing, this was a national moment. Senator Claire Mitchell, chair of the Homeland Security Committee, gavelled the session to order, experienced, tough, unintimidated by industry pressure or political gamesmanship. We're here to examine the assault of Assistant Director Camille Foster and determine whether her experience represents systemic failures in airport security nationwide, Mitchell announced. Evidence will be presented. All parties will testify. The American people deserve truth. Camille sat at the witness table in her DHS dress uniform, every medal, every commendation visible. Behind her, Director Wright, Attorney Chen, Officer Rivera, Dr. Kim, Emma Rodriguez, and 37 other victims ready to testify. Across the aisle, Airport Director Vasquez, Security Chief Kelso, union representatives, and aviation industry lobbyists. Donovan and Bennett were absent on advice of counsel, but their presence wasn't needed. The evidence would speak for them. Senator Mitchell activated the main screens. "We'll begin with video evidence captured by passenger Emma Rodriguez." The hearing room fell silent. The unedited footage played in its entirety. 15 minutes of undeniable truth. Camille's professional identification. Donovan's immediate dismissal. The credential challenge. The escalating aggression. The refusal to verify. The violent takedown. The perp walk through the terminal. Audible gasps rippled through the room at moments many hadn't seen. Donovan pocketing her credentials without checking them. Bennett positioning himself to block witness views. The coordinated positioning before the assault. "That's not security screening," someone whispered. "That's assault with badges." Senator Mitchell displayed Dr. Kim's forensic analysis next. The airport claimed technical malfunctions prevented camera documentation. Dr. Rachel Kim conducted independent analysis. Dr. Kim approached the microphone with scientific precision. 6 security cameras covering that checkpoint were manually disabled using administrator override codes 30 minutes before Agent Foster arrived. Additionally, both officers activated privacy mode on body cameras during a public enforcement action. These weren't malfunctions. This was premeditated evidence destruction. The gallery erupted. Mitchell called for order. Officer Carlos Rivera testified next, voice steady despite obvious anxiety. "I've worked at Riverside International for 8 years. I've watched it transform from professional security to systematic targeting of minorities for revenue generation. He detailed quota systems with devastating specificity. Email chains discussing monthly targets for secondary screenings and asset seizures. Supervisors praising officers who flagged the most. Passengers from target demographics. Training that taught escalation rather than de-escalation. Officers were rewarded for aggressive enforcement that generated revenue, Rivera stated. Donovan wasn't violating policy. He was following unofficial directives that everyone understood, but nobody documented officially. His testimony destroyed the rogue officer defense. This was institutional policy wrapped in plausible deniability. Officer Tyler Bennett's videotape deposition played next. His attorney had negotiated immunity in exchange for complete truthfulness. What emerged was damning. Officer Donovan saw Agent Foster's badge on the X-ray screen, Bennett testified. He was angry that a black woman had federal credentials. He said, "We need to check if these are real, because people like her buy fake badges online all the time." I asked why he thought they were fake. He said, "Look at her. Does she look like a federal director to you?" The racism was explicit, undeniable, recorded under oath, Bennett continued, voice cracking. "We were trained to escalate encounters if we wanted to search someone thoroughly or seize their property, make them react, make them non-compliant. Then everything we did was justified as responding to their behavior." Donovan was following that training with Agent Foster. He wanted to humiliate her for acting superior. The confession shattered any remaining defense. This wasn't miscommunication or split-second judgment. This was calculated punishment for perceived insubordination to racial hierarchy. Attorney Chen presented the systematic evidence. 29 documented cases over 3 years, each following identical patterns: aggressive stops of minority travelers, credential challenges, illegal searches, financial seizures. Riverside International operated a systematic scheme to generate revenue through civil rights violations, Chen stated clearly. They targeted minorities and federal personnel because these groups were least likely to have resources to fight back. Agent Foster fought back, exposing everything. Victim after victim testified. Their stories were heartbreaking in their similarity. A black college professor traveling to an academic conference. Stopped 6 times in 2 years. Always searched. Always questioned. Never apologized to. A Latina military veteran whose cash savings for her daughter's quinceañera was seized as suspected drug money. Never charged with a crime. Money never returned. Dreams destroyed. An Asian American businessman whose laptop containing proprietary corporate data was confiscated for suspicious files. Held for 3 weeks. Returned damaged. Secrets potentially compromised. No compensation offered. The pattern was undeniable, systematic, racially motivated. Financially driven, Camille finally took the stand. The room fell completely silent. "I've spent 3 years investigating discrimination in airport security," she began. "I've documented patterns. I've analyzed data. I've interviewed hundreds of victims. On March 15th, I became one of them." Her voice remained steady, but emotion leaked through controlled professionalism. "Officer Donovan assaulted me because he couldn't accept that my credentials were real. Because his worldview couldn't process a black woman holding federal authority. Because the system he worked for rewarded suspicion of people who looked like me." She looked directly at Airport Director Vasquez. "This isn't about one officer's prejudice. It's about institutional systems that enable, encourage, and profit from discrimination. Systems that make people like me prove our humanity, our credentials, our right to exist in spaces we've earned access to." The gallery erupted in sustained applause. Mitchell allowed it. Vasquez's testimony was defensive and evasive. "We take these allegations seriously, but one incident doesn't represent our entire security operation," Senator Mitchell interrupted. "Madam Director, we've heard testimony about 29 similar incidents. We've reviewed evidence of systematic discrimination. We've seen financial records showing your airport generated hundreds of thousands in revenue from targeted seizures. This isn't one incident. This is a pattern you profited from." Vasquez had no answer. Security Chief Kelso attempted damage control. Officer Donovan exceeded his authority. He's been terminated. We've implemented new training. Chief Kelso, Mitchell cut him off. You signed clearance documents for 6 previous excessive force complaints against Donovan. You knew about his pattern of behavior and promoted him anyway. Your training reform started 3 weeks ago when you got caught, not during 3 years of documented abuse. Kelso sat down, face flushed. The expert testimony phase began. Criminologists, civil rights scholars, former law enforcement officials, all presenting evidence that Riverside International exhibited textbook institutional corruption. This airport created economic incentives for constitutional violations. Dr. Torres from Stanford testified. Officers were rewarded financially for targeting minorities. That's not a flaw in the system. That is the system. Senator Mitchell addressed the packed hearing room. Based on evidence presented, this committee recommends immediate termination of officers Donovan and Bennett, removal of Security Chief Kelso and Airport Director Vasquez, federal consent decree requiring DOJ oversight for 10 years, establishment of independent civilian oversight with subpoena power, financial restitution to all documented victims, and full cooperation with ongoing federal prosecutions. The vote was called. Committee members from both parties unanimously supported the recommendations. The political calculus was simple. Video evidence and victim testimony were too compelling to oppose without appearing complicit. Final vote, 18-0 in favor of full accountability measures. The gallery erupted in applause and tears. Victims hugged each other. Supporters cheered. Justice, long delayed, had finally arrived. As the hearing concluded, Camille stood surrounded by people thanking her, sharing stories, finding courage in her fight. She'd been forced to endure assault to expose truth. But her victory wasn't just personal. It was collective. Senator Mitchell approached her privately. Agent Foster, you've changed how this country thinks about airport security. Thank you for your courage. Camille nodded, exhausted but vindicated. Thank you for listening, Senator. So many people suffer silently because they think nobody cares. Today proved someone does. The public reckoning was complete. But the real test would come in the months ahead, when cameras left and real change had to be implemented. 9 months later, Riverside International Airport looked fundamentally different. Not just in appearance, but in culture, practice, and spirit. Security Chief Brian Kelso had resigned in disgrace, facing multiple federal charges, including civil rights violations, evidence tampering, and conspiracy. His trial was scheduled for spring, with prosecutors seeking 15 years. Airport Director Helen Vasquez was terminated for cause, pension forfeited. She faced civil lawsuits from 37 victims totaling $14 million in damages. Her legacy was transformed from community leader to symbol of institutional corruption. Officer Eric Donovan stood trial in federal court on 23 counts. Deprivation of rights under color of law, assault under color of authority, evidence tampering conspiracy, and 16 counts related to previous victims. His attorney negotiated a plea agreement. 28 years federal prison. No parole. Officer Tyler Bennett received 12 years in exchange for cooperation and testimony. His statement to the judge included an apology that victims found hollow, but prosecutors found useful. His testimony had been crucial in convicting Donovan and implicating leadership. The Department of Justice consent decree transformed Riverside International completely. Federal monitors oversaw every policy change. New leadership implemented constitutional policing models, mandatory de-escalation, and implicit bias training for all security personnel. Body cameras that couldn't be disabled. Civilian Oversight Board with actual authority to investigate and discipline. The quota system was abolished entirely. Performance metrics focused on customer service and threat detection, not revenue generation or stop counts. Civil asset forfeiture required judicial approval before seizure, and detailed public reporting of all seizures and dispositions. Officer Carlos Rivera, was promoted to security chief, the first whistleblower elevated to leadership in airport security history. His first act was establishing a victims' restitution program funded by recovered assets from previous illegal seizures. "We're rebuilding trust one interaction at a time," Chief Rivera told reporters. "That takes years. But it starts with acknowledging what we did wrong and ensuring we never repeat it." The financial settlements were substantial. Camille received $6.8 million in compensatory and punitive damages. She donated $4 million to establish the Airport Travelers' Rights Project, providing free legal support to passengers facing discrimination or rights violations at any airport nationwide. 29 other victims received settlements totaling $8.3 million. Emma Rodriguez used her portion to create a non-profit training citizens on documenting police interactions and knowing their rights. The ripple effects spread nationally. The Camille Foster case became required training in law enforcement academies and airport security programs. Police departments in all 50 states revised policies on credential verification, use of force, and body camera protocols. Congressional legislation mandated federal oversight for any airport security operation with civil rights violation patterns. The Foster Accountability Act passed with bipartisan support, establishing independent review boards and victim compensation mechanisms. Aviation industry practices transformed under scrutiny. The Transportation Security Administration implemented nationwide reforms on profiling, secondary screening, and asset forfeiture. Random really meant random now, with algorithmic selection replacing officer discretion that had enabled discrimination. Camille returned to her position as Assistant Director of Internal Investigations. But her role had evolved. She became the face of accountability reform, speaking at conferences, training new agents, and testifying before Congress regularly. Her presentation on discrimination in airport security, the one she'd been traveling to deliver when assaulted, was now delivered at every major airport in America. Her personal story made the data undeniable and the urgency clear. "I survived combat deployments in federal law enforcement," she told audiences. "But the most frightening moment of my career happened in an American airport, at the hands of officers sworn to protect citizens. That should never happen to anyone." Her relationship with Director Wright deepened through shared mission. When he retired 2 years later, his recommendation for his replacement was clear and unanimous: Camille Foster. She became the first black woman to serve as Director of Homeland Security Internal Investigations, a position she used to continue transforming how federal agencies approached accountability and civil rights. Riverside International's transformation continued. Community policing forums met monthly, where passengers could question security practices without fear. Attendance grew as trust rebuilt slowly, necessarily painfully. Demographic data on security stops was published monthly and reviewed by the Civilian Oversight Board. The racial disparities that had been 3.2 to 1 dropped to 1.1 to 1. Not perfect, but approaching statistical normalcy. Customer satisfaction surveys showed dramatic improvement. Travelers of color who'd rated their airport experience negatively by 73% in pre-incident surveys now rated it positively by 61%. The change was measurable and meaningful. 3 years after the assault, a historical marker was installed at the Terminal C security checkpoint, site of civil rights incident, March 2025. Reminder that justice requires courage from those willing to stand against injustice, and accountability from institutions willing to change. Camille attended the unveiling ceremony. She stood at the exact spot where she'd been assaulted, but the space felt different now. Not because the physical location had changed, but because what it represented had transformed. "I didn't want to be a symbol," Camille told the gathered crowd. "I wanted to catch a flight to deliver a presentation. But sometimes, Ordinary people face extraordinary moments that define not just their lives, but their institutions and their country. She paused, looking at faces representing the airport's diverse community. Some of you will face injustice. Some will witness it. Some will be asked to stay silent when speaking costs something. Those are the moments that matter. Not because you're special, but because justice requires ordinary people making brave choices. The applause was genuine. Riverside had learned something profound through pain and was better for it. Emma Rodriguez expanded her documentation training program nationally, teaching citizens in 12 cities how to safely record police encounters and preserve evidence. Her organization had helped document 14 additional cases of security abuse that resulted in federal intervention. Agent Foster's case proved that evidence and persistence can defeat systemic corruption, Emma told a civil rights conference. But it also showed how many people suffer in silence. We're working to ensure everyone has the tools to document truth and demand accountability. The transformation wasn't perfect. Some officers resisted change. Some passengers clung to old assumptions. But the direction was clear: constitutional compliance over convenience, service over domination, justice over profit. 5 years after the incident, Camille married her longtime partner in a ceremony attended by Director Wright, Officer Rivera, Attorney Chen, Emma Rodriguez, and over 400 people whose lives had been touched by her fight for justice. The wedding was private, but the guest list told the story: federal agents and activists, whistleblowers and lawyers, victims who'd become advocates, and allies who'd stood firm when standing was costly. Camille Foster never wanted to be famous. She'd earned respect through dedicated service and brilliant investigation. But her real legacy came from refusing to accept. The badges granted immunity from accountability. The final statistics told their story. Federal consent decree, 10 years oversight personnel. Terminated, 12 federal prosecutions, 9 victims. Compensated, 37 policy reforms. Implemented, 63 airports implementing similar reforms, 847 lives changed. Immeasurable, but the number that mattered most was one. One woman who refused to accept that her credentials were negotiable. One woman who proved that evidence and courage could defeat institutional corruption. One woman who transformed personal trauma into national reform. Camille still wore her DHS badge with pride. Still traveled frequently for work. Still approached airport security with the muscle memory of trauma, but also the confidence of vindication. When she passed through Riverside International now, security officers greeted her respectfully. Children pointed, recognizing her from news coverage. Travelers thanked her for making airports safer for everyone. She'd survived an assault by officers who thought badges made them untouchable. She'd proven that justice, though difficult and costly, was possible when ordinary people found extraordinary courage. The transformation wasn't complete. It never would be. Vigilance was eternal, but change had begun. One badge, one body camera, one act of resistance at a time, and Camille Foster could finally travel without calculating survival. She'd won more than her case. She'd won systemic reform that would protect millions of travelers she'd never meet. That was the real victory. Not just for her, but for everyone who'd suffered silently, hoping someday someone would fight back and win. Justice had prevailed, and America's airports would never be the same. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.